I have a good guest coming on now. His name is Mike Gorga, and you're probably wondering who is that. You probably don't know, but he writes really good things on Facebook. I often just copy it and post it verbatim, giving him credit, of course. But he's up in Northeast Pennsylvania, and he has a lot to say. He's fired up. There's an element. Well, you know, you're going to meet him for yourself. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam.
Where do we begin? I'm worried. We're recording this like about 3 hours and change before the show first comes on, which is officially 6 p.m. as a podcast, and the news is coming in so fast. Look, it's a tough situation for President Trump, and I know early on you were saying, I told you so, this was going to happen, and then you circled the wagons and said, but he's our candidate. I have that right about you, right?
Oh, yeah. I was a Cruz guy. Throughout the primary. But once that was over and we had a candidate, I, rallied around.
What's going through your head on this particular day? You said to the producer before that you're really angry. You're really fired up. You don't know what to do. And I said, he'll make a perfect guest fit. We want him now.
Well, it's just that it's so overwhelming. The noise is so big. And like we say, you said a minute ago, the news is coming in. I don't think it's news. I think it's just fabricated garbage.
Right.
And I think that tiny shreds of things are being built into something they're not. And I think the biggest one in the last couple of days is what is this note that Comey supposedly wrote after meeting with Trump,
right,
where Trump said something along the lines of, I hope you can let him go through, or something like that. And the notion that the left converts that over to a threat, you better let him go through or else. And that's the tone that they're taking.
It seems
and
like,
I don't see it as that.
It seems like they figure if they repeat things often enough, and then they get the media to repeat it and bring up Watergate often enough, and then play dramatic music when they introduce it on the news and say,
Absolutely.
I remember how Cokie Roberts used to say, "Oh, the questions just won't go away." Well, you're repeating the questions over and over again, bitch. It's like, sorry about my language, but that's my attitude. And then they get John McCain looking all giddy about it, and then they get Bill Kristol, hey, I told you so, and all that. Yeah. It's like a cocktail.
It is, and I earlier today I had a post where I kind of drew a parallel with this thing with the Comey notes and what Trump said to O.J. Simpson and Buffalo Bills fans. Okay, Buffalo Bills fans loved O.J. Simpson.
Right.
When they found out that his wife and Ron Goldman had been murdered, they, I'm certain, hoped that O.J. was innocent and that he could go free.
Uh-huh.
But they didn't want him to go free if he was guilty.
Right.
So I think that that's where Trump was with this. You know how Trump is. He's not into the politicalese. He's not into he's not measuring every word he says. In fact, he's letting them fly from the hip.
Right.
And not really caring where the bullets go. But that's his style. But I think what he said was, when he said, I hope, is that he hopes that Flynn did not do anything wrong, and that as a result he could be passed through.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective on it. And they're just trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. And I just wonder if there will be, I can't use the term backlash. It sounds so gratuitous when I do it, but it's the first thing that came to mind. If there will be blowback from the way, it's always the same thing over and over again, and it's the same. I like to say, when I see people like McCain and the usual suspects and Bill Kristol with enemies like this, who needs friends? All I have to do is see who the worst people I can think of, what they're supporting, and then just be against it. I mean, there's an element of that for me. And Trump could probably do something wrong, and I would say, yeah, whatever, because of the people who.
Well, they drive you to that. They drive you to that point. You know how they do it? Here's how they do it. By the way, today I'm identifying as male, just so you know.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I was concerned about that in your case.
That I have to do that is an example of why they drive you to that point. I mean, it's just infuriating. And let's talk about Lynch and Comey.
Yeah.
There's evidence, actual evidence to support Lynch told him to change the language with which he referred to the investigation of Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
What was it? Call it from investigation to something else. I forget the word that they used, and this is documented. An issue. That's what it was. Don't call it an issue, or don't call it an investigation. Call it an issue.
Uh-huh.
She told Comey.
Right.
And also told him to go easy. And then she ran off to Arizona to meet on the tarmac with Bill Clinton.
Look at this double standard.
Why wasn't she fired? Why wasn't she investigated?
Because she's
Why
black.
isn't she being investigated now?
Because she's black.
Well, we know that.
You racist?
Yeah. Unless she was a Republican, then she'd be hung.
Well, yeah, but then she'd be an Uncle Tom.
It's just the way it
obviously.
is.
Yeah.
You know, I have a theory on all this racism stuff. It has nothing to do with race and skin color. It has to do with one thing: ideology.
Yep. Oh,
because
yeah.
if your ideology isn't on the left, it doesn't matter. You're fair game, no matter what color your skin is.
Yeah, it's all
about ideology.
Yeah, and it's really not about ideology. It's almost, in a lot of cases, I think the ideology comes after the fact that they have membership in the club, in the deep state. It's not, they can adopt whatever ideology. Believe me, I've seen people who change their ideology as it suits them and their careers and their ambitions just fine. But the key is getting in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I mean, you make a great point there.
It's enough to drive one crazy, and it's hard to temper it sometimes, but you have to, otherwise your blood pressure will just blow your eyes out.
Well, I'm glad I'm giving you the outlet here then in that case. But I mean,
imagine this is tempered. This is tempered.
I'm sure. How much do you think this is a result of sabotage within the Trump administration, and to what extent should Trump be blamed for such sabotage? For not throwing out the people, for thinking, I want to, I can deal with these liberals. What are those Goldman Sachs people doing? The liberals Ivanka brought in, I'm blanking on their names. What are they doing in the White House? Cohen, and what's her name again? I mean, really?
I don't remember. I didn't like Ivanka coming in, and I didn't like Kushner, her husband, coming in.
No.
To me it says that it's Trump saying, I'm not comfortable with any of these people, so I need some people that I can trust around me.
Uh-huh.
And so he brought them in. They don't represent the people that voted for Trump. They don't. I think they are, that says they're registered independents. I think they're mostly, liberals, progressives.
Yeah.
So, I just don't think that they're good for this. I also, I don't like Ryan in there. I don't like Priebus. I don't like any of those people. I just think that they are dumbing him down, and he's going to continue to get dumbed down because a lot of this stuff really was not principles with him. I was a Ted Cruz guy, and Glenn Beck was a Ted Cruz guy, and the argument that he always made, no matter what you think of Beck, the argument he always made was that it was about principles, and I don't know that it's that much about principles with Trump. I don't. I think that it's totally about numbers and likability. He just wants to be loved. If you don't like
wonder
him,
about that.
You're out of his circle.
I wonder. If
you like him, you're in.
Is it about being president, or is it being accepted by the cool kids in Washington who really aren't cool? And, I do wonder about that sometimes. Like, is this finally he's going to get in the club? I mean, Harry Truman was never really accepted by Washington elite, but he didn't care. That's the impression I have, and I'm not that knowledgeable about him. And, you just wonder about that. What's going on psychologically? And I think you had those concerns before the election, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And he was erratic, and he was, he just, I mean, I just had issues with it. But, you know, in the end, he, you know, I think I even wrote probably, you know, back right after the primary that if he just gets us, you know, a conservative on the court, you know, it's like that's what we're down to. But I think he brings a lot more than that to the table, because his primary interest is not in growing government so that government can provide everything for the people, including all the jobs, so that those people will be indebted to government and forever vote Democrat. His idea is free enterprise. He wants to bring companies in here, good companies that pay good money and good benefits to thrive in the United States. And that's what I believe in. So that's why I thought, you know what, it's not that bad. You know, now he makes it bad because of his style. Right. And, you know, to this day, I back him, I support him. But I'm honest enough to say, I think, you know, there's not much question he's an egomaniac and a narcissistic and maybe even sociopathic to some degree. But, you know, if he does the right things, if he brings companies in, if he gets people excited to grow their companies with his economic policies, and just the fact that, hey, there's one of us now running the show, a businessman, not a social worker, not a glorified social worker.
To what extent? Okay, go on. Sorry.
Well, pretty much that was where I was going. That's what I like about him.
Do you think this is to some extent a de facto coup, and do you think Watergate was to some extent as well?
I don't know about Watergate. There was a crime there. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know. I don't think you can compare this to that at all, because there's no evidence with the Russian thing. There's no evidence, none. The CIA and the FBI have been on this thing for 8-10 months, and when you have Dianne Feinstein saying there's no evidence, what are we doing? I just before I came on the call, there's I forget his name, but there was a Republican who's saying, you know, he'd like to see the special prosecutor, and he doesn't like where this is going. That's him, yeah.
Yeah, I don't trust him. He's an Arab. I'm prejudiced against Arabs. I hate to say it. Well, I don't trust Arabs, period, even if they're Christian.
Yeah. And I understand that. But when he said that everybody deserves a trial, and I wrote, yeah, but you know what? They also need some probable cause. Otherwise, you can't just grab somebody off the street and investigate them.
Yeah.
You have to have something. There's nothing with this, and they've done it for months. So what they're doing is they're just extending it. That's all. Why do they want a special prosecutor? They want a special prosecutor so that, you know, 2 years from now and in 2020, they can say, do we really want to vote in people who are associated with or Trump himself while he's being investigated for treason, you know, for collaborating with and colluding with the Russians. And there's no evidence. They just want to keep it going. Yeah. That's all.
Oh, the people are so stupid. You know, I want to just ask you, what do you think this all says about the state of the American people? I'm not too optimistic about what this says about our culture, our civilization. I know you have those concerns because of what you write.
Yeah, I think we're so divided that we're now two countries, and the two countries are going to battle for who runs the show. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, there's crossover. And by that, I mean that while there are two countries, there's only one academia, and we know where they are. Uh-huh. Where there are two countries, 95% of the media is on one side, and we know where that's going to go.
Probably an underestimate.
Yeah. So, and that's all documented by, you know, the voting and how these people vote and who they marry, for that matter.
Yep.
You know, but I don't give us much hope. And I think that this really started to accelerate with the war in Iraq. And that got blown up out of proportion. And that's when you had your Keith Olbermanns and other people of that ilk embellishing and lying and getting more and more forums to go through all this garbage. And then, you know, you came out of that, and then suddenly we have, you know, the first African-American president. And to
how inspiring.
Yeah, I know. And that's the problem, because he used it as both a sword and a shield throughout his entire presidency.
And there were so many scandal-worthy things. Yeah, go ahead.
I could get bashed for this, but if you think about it, you'll see where I'm coming from, and that it has nothing to do with anything nefarious. I made a comment a couple of weeks ago that the next president that is a minority, and that includes, even though they're not a minority, they're generally considered, women. They're a victims group. They have to be Republican. Because if they're Democrats, you cannot hold them responsible for anything.
Right.
You just can't do it. Because if it's a woman, you're a sexist. If they're black, you're a racist. If they're Hispanic, you're a bigot. And it just goes on and on.
Frankly, I think Joe Biden would get away with the same stuff. I mean, to the point they don't even pretend. I mean, it's easier for others, but, it's just Joe being Joe.
Why can't we just be Americans?
Right.
Why can't we just be all Americans?
Why do you guys have to be decisive?
Because there's no division in that. There's no division in that. And we have to divide so one side can get what they want.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic. I mean, I'm telling you, the character is so low, and it's almost as if they will go back to the old ways and then double down and say, look, we gave you Republicans a chance, and look what happened. Ha, 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 ha. And imagine, it's a constant attack. You have to be constantly vigilant. And look, I imagine you feel the same way. I don't see them as a loyal opposition. I don't even see them as an opposition. There's another word I see them as, and it begins with an E.
Enemy.
Yep. And there's a great piece on that. I don't know if you've ever read it. John Walker. Just Google John Walker enemies. I don't know who this guy is, but it's a great piece from like 6 years ago. Wow.
Wow.
So what's your response to that?
I don't think there's any. I haven't read it. I'll look it up. But I don't think there's any question. And the reason, how obvious does it have to be? That within a day or two after Trump won, immediately they started this undermining, and they fabricated this. I believe that the Russians hacked us. I don't believe it had any impact on us, and I don't believe they gave us. The WikiLeaks got the stuff from them.
I'm with you. There's no evidence that would suggest it. I think it was from Seth Rich, and the name that they are trying to distract attention from. Suddenly he came, his name was in the news, and it's come and gone in about 24 hours.
Yeah, well, by the way, I'm just switching to Wi-Fi here.
Got it.
I'll get it better.
Got it. Well, why don't we wrap up, because we only have about a minute left. And just any final thoughts about today's news and what's maybe a prediction for what's next? Well,
I said, I wrote that I believe that we'll probably have either an independent prosecutor within 30 days with no evidence, and I don't think Trump will last a year. I really don't. And the reason is you're going to start having rhinos fall, and once they fall and this stuff gets out, all these things get built up into massive things, and all the town halls and stuff are just overwhelmed with these nut jobs. It's just he's going to start losing people. What will happen is he'll be powerless. We're not going to get any of these things we want. Mm-hmm. I'm so upset already that with the Ninth Circuit, they obviously the Democrats are going to funnel everything through them just to delay it. Mm-hmm. It's just ridiculous, and there's an 80% chance it'll get overturned, of course. But they're mired. The Trump administration is mired in all this garbage.
Yep, it's paralyzing. So, all right, Mike, you were exactly as I hoped. Our contact had previously been all through Facebook, social media. Yep. But it's nice actually to talk to you. You've been a great guest, and I appreciate your coming on.
Thanks. All right. Thanks for the opportunity.